What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is my betting breakdown video for UFC Vegas 71. We have Curtis Blaydes going against Sergey Pavlovich.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out.
And we are back for another betting breakdown video this week, breaking down UFC Vegas 71 and Curtis Blaydes going against Sergey Pavlovich, a 12-fight card. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid card, especially from a betting perspective. I do have quite a few bets. Can't wait to get into all of those. Before we get started, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. It is always much appreciated. Working my way up to hopefully get 20K subs in the near future. I think we're like 350 away from there, so hopefully get there pretty soon. If you guys have not subscribed, be sure to do so. I do appreciate that a ton. As always, going to be going through these fights from a betting perspective and a betting perspective only. If you do want a further, more in-depth breakdown on why I'm betting what, on why I'm picking who, be sure to check out my full card breakdown and prediction video I posted on Tuesday, and then I also went live on Friday as well. Also, be sure to check out Best Bet 1 hour prior to the prelims live on this channel. So, I say we get into it. Lots of stuff to talk about. We're going to kick it off with the first fight of the card, and we have Notback going against Brady Hiestand. We have Notback sitting around minus 145, Brady Hiestand plus 125. Notback, he was around like minus 175, minus 180 earlier in the week. It looks like money's pouring in on the Brady Hiestand side, and I'm going the other way. I like Notback here. More specifically, I like him by knockout. So what I did, I played a half unit on Notback to win inside the distance at plus 140, and then I also did his KO sprinkles, KO1 plus 450 for a quarter unit, and then KO2 plus 750 for a quarter unit. I believe all of Notback's knockouts have came within the first 2 rounds, and I think that's going to be the case here. Personally leaning that first round, but yeah, I think it's a striker versus grappler matchup here, and I think at some point, Notback is going to touch the chin of Brady Hiestand. Brady Hiestand on the feet is a liability at any point in time. Obviously, Brady does have a path to victory, and that path to victory is going to be to wrestle for 15 minutes. It's just I think he's going to have to fight a perfect fight for 15 minutes without getting touched, and Notback just has crazy powers. So I like Notback to kick off the card with a knockout, and I'm hoping for it to come within the very first 2 rounds. But love me some Donat inside the distance this week. Moving on to, I don't know if it's the people's main event, but this is my main event, and we almost lost it. We had Priscilla Cachoeira miss weight by a ton. She weighed in at 130 pounds. I was really worried that they were going to cancel the fight, but yeah, I kind of figured she was going to miss weight here. She's missed weight before. She's known for going in there, grabbing the cage. She's known for eye gouging. She's known for missing weight. They call her Priscilla Catch-A-Cheating for a reason. So I figured she'd miss weight, but I didn't think she's going to miss weight by that much to where the fight was potentially in jeopardy. But luckily, the fight is still on, which is phenomenal because I have my biggest bet of the night here. So I was able to get 2.5 units down on the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 165, and then I also added on another unit on the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 190. So I have 3.5 units total on the fight doesn't go to decision. It's currently sitting at minus 200, and I think that's a very good look here. I think it's Karina Silva early or Priscilla Cachoeira late. Karina Silva, she has a ton of finishes. You can take a look at it here. Karina Silva, a 100% finish rate in a 19-fight sample. She's finished every single win she's had, and she's a favorite here. If she gets the fight down to the mat, I think she finishes Priscilla Cachoeira via submission. I don't think Karina Silva's knocking out Priscilla Cachoeira. I think she's too tough for that, but Priscilla Cachoeira, her ground game's not good, and Silva's is very good. So I think if Silva gets the fight down to the mat, it could be over shortly after. If it turns out that Karina Silva is not able to get this fight down to the mat, she's going to be in trouble, especially as the fight goes on. I think Karina Silva has about a round of gas until she starts really slowing down, and you don't want to slow down against a zombie girl. I think the 5-pound weight advantage is going to help Priscilla Cachoeira absolutely in this matchup. I think it might be a little bit harder to take down a much bigger Cachoeira, but I'm still going to pick Karina Silva to go out there and get that first round submission. But yeah, if this fight reaches the second round, it heavily favors Priscilla Cachoeira there. But I don't care who wins this fight. As long as this fight finishes inside the distance, I'll be happy. 3.5 units on some violence as a whole. Love the fight doesn't go decision. Love the under 2.5 rounds. And I think it's one of my favorite spots on the entire card. Moving on, we have Francis Marshall going against William Gomes. William Gomes missed weight by a couple pounds, I believe, but he went back and he had an extra hour, and he ended up making weight, which was a good thing. It could also be a bad thing having to go in and cut weight again, but yeah, he made weight. The only fighter to not make weight was Priscilla Cachoeira. Yeah, I lean Marshall here. Just don't really love the price. I wasn't too impressed really with either guy, but with William Gomi, he's a guy that kind of, backs up to the back of the cage in pretty much every fight. He's not that aggressive on the feet. Good striker, but just not aggressive. I feel like it's going to be Francis Marshall, the one coming forward, landing the bigger shots. And I think it's all going to come down to who's going to win these grappling exchanges, these wrestling exchanges. And I kind of lean towards Francis Marshall doing that here. But yeah, no strong take. William Gomi, I didn't think he looked like awful at the weigh-ins, but it's a fight I'm just going to be passing on here. The pick's Francis Marshall, but really want nothing to do with it at minus 200. Next, we got Junior Tafa going against Muhammad Usman. This is personally my 1-800-GAMBLER fight of the week. I will not be betting on this fight, but it looks like everybody's betting on this fight. I've heard a lot of people say that Junior Tafa's a lock this week, which is very interesting considering he had his very first MMA fight just 8 months ago. The ground game is extremely untested on the Tafa side. Muhammad Usman should go out there and wrestle. I think it's either Tafa KO1 or Muhammad Usman goes out there and wrestles this fight, gets it down to the mat and exposes Junior Tafa, who probably doesn't have a ground game. It's a fight I want nothing to do with. I would not recommend putting money on this fight, but it looks like everybody's betting Tafa this week. But it's a big pass for me. Like, no props are sticking out. The fight doesn't go to decision, minus 325. Like, no thank you. It's just going to be a big stay away for me. With that said, Muhammad Usman was like plus 200 last week. I would have definitely been on that, but at a pick'em, I'm okay. I'm all right. Moving on, we got Norma Dumont going against Carol Hosa. So I have a couple parlays on this card, and then in this fight I have the over 2.5 in a parlay. I'll go over my 3 parlays at the very end, but yeah, I think the over is a solid parlay piece here. I don't really see a finish on either side. Carol Hosa, not some big power puncher. Norma Dumont couldn't finish a white belt and Daniel Wolf in her last fight. I see this fight going to decision. I see it being very competitive. In terms of a money line, I want nothing to do with it. It's going to be a close fight. I do lean towards the Dumont side just due to the size. I think the size is going to play a factor here, but no confidence in that whatsoever. So the only thing I like here is that over 2.5 rounds, hoping there's not a finish. And if there was a finish, I'd be fairly surprised. I just don't really see where that finish would possibly come from. So over 2.5 as a parlay piece, I'll go for my parlays at the end. Next, we got Montel Jackson going against Ronnie Yaya. And I have the under 2.5 rounds here. So it opened up around minus 210 for the under 2.5 rounds. I was like, okay, no thank you. Money actually came in on the over, and it went to minus 142. I did jump in there for a unit at minus 142 on that under. Should have went heavier on that, but I kind of figured I would be adding on to some Montel Jackson inside the distance. Montel Jackson KO, hopefully at plus money. But that's not the case. They have Montel Jackson by KO like minus 140. Montel Jackson inside the distance around minus 150. That's a lot of juice to lay for Montel Jackson to finish this fight. I do think he finishes this fight. I'm pretty confident he finishes this fight, but laying that much juice on him to do so is just not something I want to do. So yeah, I played the under here for unit minus 142. If I can go back in hindsight, I'd probably put 1.5 to 2 units on that, but I was fully expecting to add on to some Montel Jackson violence props, but they're just overpriced this week, which is weird because a lot of people think this fight's going the distance. I don't see it personally. I think Montel Jackson destroys Ronnie Yaya probably in the first round. I think it's a horrendous matchup for the 38-year-old and Ronnie Yaya, but we're just not getting good price tags here on the violence. So yeah, all I got is 1 unit on the under 2.5 rounds at minus 142. Moving on, we got Ricky Glenn going against Christos Giagos. Nothing here pre-flop, but I might be looking at this from like a live bet situation. I think Christos Giagos has potential to win this first round. Christos Giagos seems to always slow down as the fight goes on, so instead of betting Ricky Glenn as the favorite, I might just wait till that second round, because I do expect Giagos to go out there and have a lot of success early. It's just we always see Giagos slow down as that fight goes on. So live bet on Ricky Glenn, if anything, but not a fight I'm really running to the window to bet here. It's going to be a stay away from me. Moving on, we have Jeremiah Wells going against Matt Simmonsberger. I have a small bet here on the under 1.5 rounds. I got it at plus 145. That line is still there. Just a half a unit on it. I think this fight is going to be absolute chaos, at least early on. Jeremiah Wells has been under 1.5 rounds in all 3 of his UFC fights. Jeremiah Wells has a ton of power. He's a BJJ black belt, and Simmonsberger has a ton of power in his own right as well. When Simmonsberger is finishing fights, it's in the first round in his own right. So I think these guys are going to stand and bang. I think these guys both have a ton of power, and I think if there's a finish, it's going to come early here. I'm going to pick Jeremiah Wells to get that first round finish, but Matt Simmonsberger has a ton of power himself. So give me the under 1.5 rounds, plus 145, half a unit. I don't hate the fight, doesn't go to decision, in the under 2.5 as well, but I wanted that plus money on this one. Moving on, we have Lasman Lucinda going against Brogan Walker. So yeah, I have Lasman Lucinda as a parlay piece in two parlays. We'll touch on those parlays at the end here, but I think she should go out there and win this fight. The only thing that concerns me is WMMA. She's 21 years old, and we've seen it bite me a lot in the past, like parlaying and being really confident in these WMMA favorites. But my goodness, I mean, I was very impressed with Lasman Lucinda in her debut against Heregi. She went out there, and all I saw prior to that fight was just her wrestling, her grappling, and I was impressed with her grappling and her ground and pound as well. She's very nasty on top, and I didn't really see much of her striking. Then she comes in there against Heregi and looks really good. She's competitive in that fight. So in this fight on the feet, Brogan Walker, she's very low volume. It's going to be Lucinda that's more aggressive on the feet. I think that's absolutely going to matter here. And then Brogan Walker in her debut against Juliana Miller showed a 0% takedown defense. So Lasman Lucinda, although she wasn't able to get takedowns in her debut, I think she can probably get them here. And if she gets on top, I think she can finish Brogan Walker potentially. We saw Juliana Miller do it, and Juliana Miller's horrible. So I like Lasman Lucinda here as a parlay piece. Like I said, it worries me a tad, but I really do think she should win this fight. I have her in two parlays, and then I also put a half unit on the under 2.5 rounds at plus 220. That's currently plus 205, thinking that if Lucinda does get on top of Walker, I think she's going to have a solid chance to finish this one. So give me the under at plus money, half a unit, plus 220, and then I also have Lasman Lucinda in a couple parlays. Moving on, we got Bobby Green going against Jared Gordon. I think it's a great matchup for Bobby Green here. I think it's about as good of a matchup you can get if you're Bobby Green. He's going to be the much better striker by a mile. Jared Gordon has really good striking numbers on paper, but that's because he's fighting all grapplers. Like, you take a look at Jared Gordon's record, literally all grapplers. Like, he hasn't fought a striker in years. Bobby Green is a striker and a very good one. I think Bobby Green's going to put it on Jared Gordon. I think on the feet it's not even going to be close at all. And I think Bobby Green's going to have an opportunity to knock out Jared Gordon, who's been knocked out 4 times in his career. So I like Bobby Green here quite a bit. And the only thing that scares me, if this fight does go the distance, the judges have sucked bad lately, and the judges always seem to screw Bobby Green. So outside of like a robbery decision where Bobby Green clearly wins, I think Bobby Green should get this done, and unless the judges screw him here. And the only other thing I don't like is the fact that Bobby Green does mess around at times, but he looks to be doing a lot better at that. And then I also sprinkled a quarter unit on Bobby Green to win by knockout at plus 380. I think he has a solid chance to knock out Jared Gordon here. I think he's going to hit Jared Gordon in the face and hit him in the face a lot, and we could see Gordon go down. So Bobby Green by KO, quarter unit, plus 380, and then I also parlayed up Bobby Green. I'll touch on that parlay at the end. Moving on, we got Brad Tavares going against Bruno Silva. And yeah, I think this fight all comes down to which Bruno Silva is going to show up. Is it going to be the Bruno Silva that showed up last time that fought like he was a drunk guy, just drinking all day, showing up, just looking sluggish, awful? Or is he going to show up and look like the absolute killer Bruno Silva that showed up in his first couple UFC fights? I think I'll give him a pass because that was the only time we saw Bruno Silva look that bad, and I think there is some recency bias. Like, if Bruno Silva went out there and starched Gerald Mearshart like he was supposed to, we would not be getting Bruno Silva here at dog money. So I like Bruno Silva as a pick, but what I like even more is going to be the Bruno Silva finish only. I have 2.5 units on it at minus 135. It's actually minus 130 on FanDuel Sportsbook. I think if there's a finish in this fight, it's much more likely that it's going to be on the Silva side. We'll take a look at it here. Brad Tavares, first of all, 0 submissions. That's important because all Bruno Silva does is get submitted. Second of all, we have Brad Tavares with a 37% finish rate, and Brad Tavares has 1 submission, but no submissions in the UFC. Sorry, my numbers are backwards there. Bruno Silva's been submitted 6 times. I don't see a submission here on the Tavares side. And then on the flip side, Brad Tavares only 1 knockout in the UFC, and I think he has like 1 knockout in like the last 12 years. So I think if there's a knockout in this fight, it is going to come from the Bruno Silva side, and I think that finish only should be much wider than the minus 130, minus 135 it does indicate. So 2.5 units, finish only for the Bruno Silva side. All right, moving on, we have the main event, Curtis Blaydes going against Sergey Pavlovich. I have 4 bets on this fight, so I have the fight doesn't go to decision in a parlay. I have the fight won't start round 4 in a parlay. I have the under 1.5 rounds, minus 140 for 1.5 units, and then I have a quarter unit on Sergey Pavlovich to win in the first round by knockout plus 410 for a quarter unit there. So yeah, lots of action on this fight. I'm looking at violence. I think this fight's pretty simple to break down. What's going to happen first is Curtis Blaydes going to get a takedown? If he does, I think he wins the fight pretty easily. If Curtis Blaydes does not get a takedown, he's getting knocked out here. Sergey Pavlovich has a ton of power. Blaydes has been knocked out in all 3 of his losses. I think we're getting violence in this one for sure. So yeah, give me violence. Fight doesn't go. Fight won't start round 4, under 1.5, and then that quarter unit shot on Sergey Pavlovich, round 1 knockout at plus 410. I think that's literally his only path to victory here. All right, so going to go over my 3 parlays. The first parlay is Bobby Green, parlayed with the fight doesn't go to decision in the main event. Came out to minus 167 for 2 units. My second parlay is Lasman Lucinda, parlayed with the Carol Hosa, Norma Dumont fight over 2.5 rounds. That came out to minus 149 for 1 unit. And then the third parlay is Lasman Lucinda, parlayed with the Blaydes Pavlovich fight won't start round 4. That came out to minus 162 for 1 unit. I have 3.5 units total on the Priscilla Cachoeira Karina Silva fight doesn't go to decision. I have a unit and a half on the under 1.5 rounds in the Blaydes Pavlovich fight. I have a quarter unit on that Pavlovich round 1 knockout plus 410. I have a quarter unit on Bobby Green by knockout plus 380. I have a half unit on the Walker Lucinda under 2.5 rounds. 2.5 units on the Bruno Silva scorecards, no action, finish only. Minus 135, 1 unit on the Montel Jackson, Ronnie Yaya, under 2.5 rounds, minus 142. I have a half unit on the Jeremiah Wells, Matt Simmonsberger, under 1.5 rounds, plus 145. And then I have the Notback wins inside the distance, half a unit, plus 140. And then a quarter unit on his first and second round knockout props, knockout 1, quarter unit, plus 450. And then knockout 2, a quarter unit, plus 750. That is all the action for me. Hoping for a lot of violence. Kind of a sketchy card, especially from a money line perspective. Lots of pick and fights, lots of tough fights to call. But I think there's some good violent spots, some good parlay pieces, and should be a good card overall. Best of luck for UFC Vegas 71. Next week, I think we have UFC Vegas 72, which is a terrible, terrible card. But it is what it is. And then we have a very good pay-per-view coming up after that. So lots to look forward to. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Do appreciate all the support, and let us make some money for UFC Vegas 71. See you guys later.